Oh, it's in progress.
We're in progress, Joey. Listen, it's as I had this little intro researched on AI to introduce you, so I'd like to read it what it says, if you don't mind. It says
No.
we're going to sit down with one of the true originals in American radio, a man whose wit, mischief, and midnight magic changed the sound of the airwaves for more than 6 decades, plus or minus. I threw that in. From his wild top 40 days at WKBW to his legendary overnight run on WOR in New York, Joey Reynolds redefined what a radio personality could be. He's a storyteller, a pioneer, a provocateur, and one of the last great voices from radio's golden era. So, hello to the incomparable Joey Reynolds. How are you?
Oh, hey, hi, Jimmy. It's good.
Was that a good interview?
I've learned to forgive my enemies.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I was never on that list. I mean, I don't know where I would have been today if I was. So you are where? You're in Florida?
Yeah, I'm being punished.
Yeah, okay. And but you love it down there. You have family and everything, so you're enjoying life.
I have family in California, and I have family here, and I have those people who don't speak to me in other cities. No, yeah, I have a very good family life. That's what it's all about. I fell on my head, and I had brain surgery. Uh, but nothing changed. I was always crazy, and crazy is comes with me, but stupid is another story.
What is it? Crazy is crazy does? Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I fell on the back of my head, and I was at a gas station in New York. There are only two left, and I got some surgery on the back. But I went to the Consumer Electronics Show. I came back fainted, and they did an emergency brain operation. And I was in ICU after the operation, and I saw all of my family members were there. So I thought I died and went to hell.
yeah. Well, we're all glad that you're okay and that you recovered really beautifully.
Yeah.
You look terrific.
Oh, thank you. I have a good life because I'm healthy, and I did about 28 years of the Bikram yoga in the hot room, the sweaty room,
Yeah.
and I think that did it. Plus, I'm sober about 43 years. So after doing all those drugs, when you knew me in L.A., I don't remember seeing you.
Yeah, you've been told that we were together, but
I heard a lot of things about me.
well, listen. So just to kind of, you have such a long and sordid career. To try to cover it all is really going to be quite the challenge. But back in the days when it was so great to be on the radio, you were starting out on truly one of the great radio stations because I remember when I was in Michigan, I used to listen to you driving down from Flint to Detroit on WKBW. And you
Yeah.
had a good time there, it sounds like, until they fired you, I guess.
Well, no, I actually quit.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah, because I was not getting my own way. This whole thing is it's a mix up. I mean, it's show business, but we forget that the word business comes in front of show. And I've never been about business. I've always been about the show. I love people. I love entertaining, and I love reaching people. And I always wanted to be famous with people. But the management I never did well with. So I had about 40 jobs. You know, that's when I was getting fired all the time. But in Buffalo, I had a bad scene with a couple of guests I had on the show. Frank Gorshin, who was on Batman at the time, that was a series on television on ABC, if you recall. And
Yeah.
another one was Forrest Tucker, and I had made fun of them on the air because they were being paid to do a telethon, and nobody knew in those days that telethons were a business. And there was money going to everybody, including Jerry Lewis. I mean, he did not leave poor. But when people make money off of what everybody else is donating to, it's kind of sours it. And they don't want, we never wanted the public to know that. So me with my big mouth, I got on the radio show that night, and I was scheduled to be on the telethon. And I told the big secret. I said, well, Frank Gorshin is getting 10 grand plus Forrest Tucker's getting a case of booze in his drink. I went on with it. And it was like that moment that you don't want to have. The owners were Cap City Broadcasting. They own ABC and the network television. And they came in and they said to me, you've embarrassed our guests. And I says, well, for 10 grand, so what? They're making a lot of money off of you. No, we don't want that on the air, and you can't be talking like this. And so he says, so I'm going to fire you. And I said, you can't fire me. You're not my boss. He said, well, he's fired. So it became like a Marx Brothers movie. Everybody's firing everybody, and there were no shots. So I went to my dressing room with a go-go girl I was dating at the time. She was also having an affair with the manager at the station, but we weren't supposed to know that. And I took my shoes in the dressing room for my TV show, and I nailed them to his door. And I said, "Fill these, you a-hole." And that wasn't very popular. They didn't forgive me. I lost my mind and my pension.
Well, but on the air, prior to this, of course, you did some, really outrageous things. I mean, what was your thought in going on in your head about all the stuff you used to do? And because there was quite a cast on that station, as I recall, WKBW.
Well, that station was formatted except for my show. Everybody had to follow a certain music list, and I played whatever I wanted, and I had fun with it. I just had a lot of fun. I did what all young people do when I was 19, 20 years old. You just have a good time and go out and pick up someone and drink and do whatever you do. I did all that, but I put it on the air. See, that's the difference. Most other people had a persona. I didn't have a persona. I just let it all hang out. That's why I got in trouble.
And
but that's that story. Oh my God, there's been so many of them. Howard Stern stopped me one day years later. I didn't replace him, but I replaced the time period on NBC in New York. The same show he was doing, but I was 6 months after he had been fired. And one day I gave him one of my famous cheesecakes at this Reynolds restaurant. You probably see their sauce. And I went into the place and he says, "You're Joey Reynolds." I said, "Yeah," with that little whiny voice he has. And he says, I don't know. He says, you're old. I said, "Not old." And he says, "Well, you're doing what I did." And I said, "Howard, when you were born, there was a star in the east, me." And that was the end of that discussion. But he did sexual stuff. Imus, who I worked with on NBC, did political stuff, and I just went for the management. And that wasn't the best place to go. That's where you get in trouble with the money. They have the control of the money. Have you noticed who runs the world right now?
Apparently,
the
yeah.
guy has all the money, right?
Yeah.
And they probably always did. That's why you had a king. A king owned the land. Or they had a corner on the market, And I didn't never have that respect for money. I do now because there's so little of it.
Yeah.
So I have a reverse mortgage on my grave. So I'm doing
good. So back to KBW, you did a couple things, as I recall, that were really kind of interesting. You had you came out with a record called "Rats in My Room," and I just saw you post it, or somebody posted it recently on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, Danny Neverth was my afternoon. He was in the afternoon, and I was on at night. And we would exchange at 7:00 at night. And we were both very funny together because we were breaking each other's balls. We had a good time. And it went on forever. We didn't have a time limit. It wasn't over the intro of a record or 3 seconds or play another song. Let's rush to a song that nobody's ever heard before. Lots of luck on that one. So he and we had a good time about everything. And we used to make fun of artists. And there was a song called "Rats in My Room," and we rewrote it and recorded it in one of our friends, Tommy Shannon's basement. and on the background was Fred. Was Phil Spector's singers, the ones that he had. There was a group that he had that background, and they
Yeah.
did the background on us. It was an awful record, and we put the thing out. But Danny was the music director, so it became number one. Geez, what a surprise!
And you played it a lot on that station, I remember.
Yeah, until in New York they wouldn't play it because they had a rat infiltration
Infestation.
in subways or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It got to be. It was a joke. I mean, Danny always talks about how we got our first BMI check. It was 85 cents. And we didn't make any money. It
You're not
was.
making residuals on it right now?
I think right now we're still getting royalties.
Really?
I'm down to 2 cents. Now, when you work like this and you have free range, it's a lot of fun, and that's the thing that's missing right now, because all the late night show guys, for instance, on television, they do political jokes that are not even written by them, probably. 6 or 7 guys sit there all day and make fun of all the politicians that nobody wants to hear anyway, because nobody trusts anybody anymore. We don't want to hear it, and we're up to here with it, I think. So I said, all right, let's get out of this thing. Let's just stay in the entertainment business. So I never did a political show. Didn't take any phone calls. On all 14 and a half years I was on WOR, I never took phone calls. I never had any politics on the show. You wonder, well, what did you do? I had what my producer called a cocktail party without booze. Every night we put people on that didn't necessarily go together. It was like Steve Allen used to do. Remember him years ago? I mean, you're old
Yeah.
enough to remember
Yeah.
him. Steve was on in LA on television, and he was outside with a mic, and he could never. People are not funny as a rule. They don't write material. So he got tired of being out there, and he created these characters. They pretended that they were regular people, like Jose Jimenez, and he had 4 or 5 of them, and they were all big stars, Bill Dana included. And every one of them went on to do Gordon Hathaway. He was a Madison Avenue guy, and he pretended they were real people, of course. And it was a funny show. So on that note, I said, we're not going to be able to get people to talk on the phone the way they're not going to be entertaining. They're going to be bitching about something they don't like. And why the Yankees didn't win the pennant this year. And oh, come on, how many times are you going to have that conversation? So and from how many different points of view. So I said, let's just have fun. So I put Les Paul came in every once a week. I did some stand up with him on Monday nights, and then he'd come and do my show. And he always had somebody with him. There was always somebody that stuck around that wanted to have a guitar lesson, like Paul McCartney. I mean, people like that would come, and then he'd drag them to the show. So my show became like it was an event, because you never knew who was going to be there. And then we had it catered. We had people bring food from all the restaurants. And that was always a good thing. And those days they weren't doing it so much. Now they're doing it on TV a little bit. But we were just making it up as we went, and it worked. It worked very well because there was no format, and there were no boundaries. Yet it wasn't vulgar. I never got fired. Never got a management. No, never lost a sponsor because we didn't have any.
Yeah, the Red Cross, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was all freeform. It was freeform, and it worked wonderfully for a number of years.
Well, you got
And everybody
syndicated.
wanted to be on that show because they knew that if it would, I was babysitting people. When you're on at midnight and you're on 4 hours at midnight, people either get up to pee or they just don't like to go to bed. And there are those who are waking up in the middle of the night to go to work. In New York, you go to work at 4 a.m. if you want to avoid traffic. And so I had a whole deal of cultural following of people who were essentially fans. We call them fans, but they actually were not aggravated enough to call themselves that. You got to aggravate them, If you that's what these political talk shows are about. On the podcasts are essentially for people who can't get jobs on radio, but nobody wants one on radio now anyway. We were popular. You know,
So
when you
when
have
the people came, they of course they were there to have a good time, because that's what the show
yes,
was known
it
for.
was
And
because they didn't.
you
There was
were
no punishment, no punishment. They knew that if they were there, they were in a safe zone. Nobody was going to pick on them or get their political views. That's murder. It's disastrous. To
yeah.
Johnny Carson, I learned a little bit from him. I actually like Steve Allen for his laugh and his talent. He was wonderfully talented with many things. But Johnny had an idea. He would get all of the craziness out of his system in the first 7 minutes of the show or 8 minutes of the show. And then the show became everybody who was on it. And he would set them up. So they did the work. See, the guests were the workers. They're the ones who told the stories and exchanged with each other. And the repartee was all about them and their experiences. But it was Johnny Carson's show. You know, he had his name on it. The other guys had to work hard because they did all of the work. Jack Parr was never off camera. Hour and a half, all you do is see him. I don't know. It's evolved and it's changed. I just did a pilot right now. I tell everybody I shot a pilot, and they think I'm talking about United Airlines. But I have a little show that I put together, which has no politics on it, and yet I have the ex-mayor on the show, not talking about politics. And I had Luke Christie; it was his last appearance, and Michael Imperioli, who was with The Sopranos, and all we did was have fun. And we were at a place in Little Italy. Well, it was a combination of looked like a podcast that went wrong, or a regular broadcast that turned into a podcast. It was just goofy. People really are simple. We're not complicated. We like to make everything elaborate and luxurious and overdo everything. Now, there's a place for that. I mean, motion pictures, it's a craft, and it has to be structured, and it has to have meaning and opening, closed, writing. But this kind of stuff, this radio freeform, it's just fun, and you live your life on the air. That's what I did.
So after KBW, there was a whole bunch of stations. Maybe a couple of highlights from some of the stations you worked at. One of them was WPOP in Hartford. I remember I went out there to see you once when you were on the air, and I mean that was a kind of a legendary station, back in the East Coast. Anything that comes
It
to
was the
mind?
first. It was the first top 40 station in Hartford.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, and it was owned by the people who created it, Cuddle in Kansas City. They're the ones who gave Storer the idea for top 40.
Hmm.
So it began with these the owners who lived in Kansas City. They'd send us the music list, and I would tear it up because it didn't matter. You're playing music from Kansas City. Who cares?
Yeah.
We had so much other talent. Like, you're from Detroit, so I worked with you in Detroit. I was at WXYZ, and we had enough of our own stuff. We didn't need to send out. There was even a war between Philly and Detroit on the music. Philadelphia would not play any Motown records, and Detroit wouldn't play any Philly records, Philly sound records, because they were cornering the market for themselves. That was really foolish because both of them had great success eventually by crossing over.
Sure.
It's you learn these things by trial and error. Nobody's got this down. Nobody. We don't have this conversation we have. We don't talk about what we're going to talk about. You don't have it. You don't have it down. You don't. It doesn't go in a straight line, and people don't think that way either. I always was. I'm very respectful of audience. Shakespeare said it well. He said, "Play to the crowd." That's who you play to, not the management. The management's ridiculous. The government is ridiculous. How are you going to play to these guys? They're so caught up in themselves, you can't get any humor out of them. They don't even have humor about humor. They try to stop humor because it's in the way.
Yeah, there isn't a U.S. Department of Humor, I don't think. Yeah.
No, there's no FCC either. The FCC, anything that begins with F, I'd be leery of. That's the F word you don't want. The Federal Trade Commission, the FCC, come on. This is all. It just got way out of line. The country. If we didn't change, we would all be dating pilgrims right now. I mean, come on. It has to change. It has to go where everybody is creative about it. I'm in a family where they make it up as they go, and that's the way it should be. Even at dinner, I don't put restrictions on how people handle each other in the family. I think you have to have boundaries. I mean, there's certain boundaries. You don't want to. I don't like the F word. That's not my favorite word. Although my little grandson, 11 years old, I drive him to school every day, and he had one of the channels on the iPad, and I said, "Don't watch that thing. I don't like that F word on there." And he says, "Why? Everybody's talking that way." He says, "Hey, no, everybody's not talking that way." I says, "And this is the English language, the number one language in the entire world. And when you have used every word in the English language, then you can use the F word. I'll be okay with it." So that's how
That's
I
good
talk to them.
advice. Yeah.
Well, you got to talk. You have to go to where they are. Even Jesus went to where the crowd was. The crowd didn't come to him. You have to go. You have to go to where everybody is, and try to figure out what is going to be fun for you guys. I use the word fun a lot because I think that's the missing ingredient right now. I think we get into fear. It's another F word, but so it's fun. But fear is a terrible place to be. It's terrible because there's an acronym. It's false evidence assumed real, and it's just not real. It isn't real to live in fear. Even Roosevelt, what did he say when he was president? If you look at your history, he said you have nothing to fear but fear itself. So if you're afraid of something, you're never going to move. You won't move. One of the reasons I came here to Florida after my brain surgery was, I mean, I'm used to a big market, used to a lot of activity, opening nights, A-lists, all the crap. But all of a sudden now I'm here in a local little place in the middle of Florida. And someone said, "How do you do that?" And I said, Mother Teresa said, "Grow where you're planted." That's the secret. The secret is to just enjoy your life and start to realize that the value that you have is from your great gifts that you have not exercised maybe, or maybe you admire someone else without pride and without anger. It's hard to not be jealous, for instance, or envious. That's the other word for it. But when you're in Hollywood, for instance, you look at someone getting all these awards and you think, "Oh, wow, that guy's got it made." But I could tell you story after story. I worked at 20th Century Fox, that.
Right.
And having all of this experience that I had watching big show, I was behind the scenes. I wasn't a star. I was a mini star on the radio, but not on film. But I learned my craft. I learned it, and I had fun with it, and I had a great time. And I got to watch people make a lot of money. I worked on Star Wars, so marketing director, creative director, and Lucas. He made a lot of money, and I think the first film he made $90 million. 20th Century Fox did.
Yeah.
The second film, he made the 90 million.
Well, I think
So,
I didn't know that you were a philosopher. That it's a new gig that I think you could do really well. Maybe it's all these years of yoga and just life's experience, that has taught you things. I mean, radio is sort of like the street. It's like street fighting in many ways. It's where you learn a lot of things that you don't learn if you have a big corporate job, you don't get to the public, but when you're on the radio like you were, and you were in every market that's known to man practically. I mean, just think about it. You went from Buffalo to Rochester, right? To Hartford.
well, actually, I went from Buffalo to Cleveland to Detroit, and then
Oh, okay.
Philadelphia, and then LA. But
And then,
listen. I have been surrounded by great people. That's the secret of that. If it's a secret, whether it's Wayne Dyer, I had a 4-hour show, and I had great people on it, and they were inventive. It was Joan Rivers first in what she was doing. Everybody was good at what they were doing. They were all experts at what they were doing. It rubs off on you. You learn to behave a little bit when you're surrounded by greatness. And I certainly don't consider myself to be great, but I consider myself to pay attention. I paid attention. But let me tell you a fly in the ointment, because you mentioned Hartford a while ago. I was working with Morton Downey Jr. in Syracuse. I lived with him, and we were roommates. He was the morning guy, and I was the afternoon guy, and we shared an apartment. And he never could tell the truth. He was an exaggeration artist. He embellished. I'm trying every way to say he's not a liar, but we had a wonderful friendship. But I knew who I was dealing with all the time, and he was dealing with me, and some of us rubbing off too. So when you're in radio, you lie about a lot of things. That's what we do with commercials, and contests and giveaways and all the stuff that we did to get attention. So it's a fine line. You can really be full of crap, or you can be kind of full of crap. So with Morton Downey, he got fired because he made fun of nuns on the air on his morning show, which you wouldn't do in a Catholic city like Syracuse, probably not anywhere. And he was a political animal because his father was, I don't know if you know this or not, but there was a star, the first music star in the country was Morton Downey, the singer, his father. Yeah. And he was best of friends with Joseph Kennedy. So all those big shots were together. And Downey went to school with the Kennedys. He went with Teddy Kennedy. They all grew up in the same neighborhood in Connecticut, actually, not Hyannis. So Downey could have anything he wanted to have. He even had a hit record on Cadence Records, which is the label that had the Archie Blyer owned the label. It was Arthur Godfrey's band leader, but he had a record label that had The First Family, which was about the Kennedys, and it was a best-selling album in history. So Downey was a pretty good promoter. And after he got thrown out of Syracuse, we had an apartment together. He went to Hartford, and he called me and he says, "Hey, come on, I got a great place living here, and I'm the program director, and I'll make you a star," because I hadn't been anywhere yet. See, so I was 19. So now I get to Hartford, and he's living at the Y. He's not the program director, and I'm saying, "Oh no, I was stuck with my father's car, I borrowed from Buffalo, and I'm up against it." So I went sitting in for someone on WPOP, which he was angling to be program director of, and eventually he did become program director and got rid of everybody. And I was so outrageous, knowing that I was stuck, that I got on the air and talked about it. So I created an audience, and right across the street from our station on Asylum Street, well named, is the Capitol. And the governor, Dempsey's son, was a fan of mine. So he would come over, and he came over when I had these acetates of sherry from a recording session in New York at Bob Crew that I went to, Four Seasons. They were the background singers, incidentally. And I brought the acetate back, and then another friend of mine who was a disco starter-upper, he brought the other disc, and I got two turntables, and I played sherry for 4 hours without interruption. Nothing in between, turntable to turntable. I wore it so much, I think we're playing the B-side of the record, which is, there wasn't anything on it. But the police came, and of course they didn't arrest me because I had the governor's son. That's always a good protection. And the other thing was, the only reason I got away with 4 hours of it without anybody stopping me is Morton Downey was the program director. He's crazier than me. So, you got two guys that got away with something that made the Four Seasons a hit record. That's what we did. And that's how the career started. But it was if Downey were not program director, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So things happen the way they're, you can't orchestrate them. You just have to go along with it. That's that piece. Yeah. I don't think you knew that. Did you know that he was a programmer?
No, I didn't know and the governor's son. I didn't know that little part of it either. That's pretty amazing.
Governor Dempsey, that's who it was at the time. In case there's a fact checker, we don't have a lot of those right now.
Yeah, but you made headlines with that, and of course, and I think it's featured in the Jersey Boys to some extent, isn't it? Do they talk about?
Yeah, well, that's me, but they used a black guy because that's what they needed to do for a dual role when the show was first previewed at the Coronado Theater in San Diego. Well, they wanted to have somebody of color, you know. I mean, you had to put
Yeah.
somebody besides these white kids from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was good. I mean, you know, the thing was a hit. It's a hit. Hey, listen, we're living in a country of prejudice, and we shouldn't have any of it. It's ridiculous because everybody, if you have an accident and you need blood, you don't care who it comes from. That's just bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just take this from a guy like me. I don't never look. The recording artists we had, we were at Motown. What do you think? There was the only white person at Motown was Irv Beagle, the promotion director. You know, I mean, but we had a wonderful relationship with everybody of color, and we had to fight for them to even get to play at the Rooster Tail in Detroit, which is the biggest nightclub. They didn't want anybody except Sammy Davis, I think, was the first one they let in, and then Diana Ross. All the other black acts played over at the 20 Grand. I think it was called 20. Yeah, I mean, you know, we've gone through all this. We've learned from it, and people should talk about it. It's history. You know what the word historian comes from? History.
His story.
It's a Greek word. It means seeking. And that's what it is. That's what history's about. It's looking for things.
Well, that's why we have started this website called USARadioMuseum.com, which we're featuring you on it right now. And the point is that there are so many great moments in broadcasting that people don't even know about, especially the new people that are trying to do what they call broadcasting now. But in your day, you weren't really a radio DJ. You were a media personality, probably one of the first media personalities, because you didn't see any limits to where your personality could go. It was on radio for the moment, but then you brought in television, right? And you, of course, brought in the internet. You brought in, you know, performances. You did the thing in Times Square. I mean, talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think that's pretty interesting. The whole combination of multimedia.
I got tired of listening to radio and hearing political talk shows.
Yeah.
That's all it was phone call arguments. I said, if I wanted that, I would have stayed married. You know, I mean, who wants to hear that all the time? You don't want to have arguments all the time. And I had a very good wife, incidentally. I'm just joking. So I worked at WOR, and I convinced the owner. Rick Buckley took me out to dinner one time, and he was the owner of the station, and he said, "You know, you really should be on TV." I said, "Are you firing me?" He said, "No," and I said, "Well, you were at NBC. Why don't you put me on TV?" He says, "Joey, I was an usher. I was a page." That's when I started. I was going to college. He says, "I don't know anything about TV." So I started to think about it, and I went to various people, and I even went to Frankie Valli. And Frankie's one of his good friends was the chairman of the NASDAQ. And the NASDAQ has a connection for the closing of the market at 4 p.m. to NBC television. And that would be without having to pay for satellite or phone lines. They had a direct connection. So I said, what if I did a show from here? Nobody had done a television show from NASDAQ. So in the window of the place, the only thing they had done from there was the market closing, when they ring the bell and somebody yells about money. So I got the permission. And then I went to Richard Rubenstein, who was the biggest PR guy in New York. And I put a meeting together with the president of NBC and this guy and that guy. And anyway, they loved it. And they put me on, which was the first streaming and cable show. This is before Cablevision bought General Electric sold. I worked for GE. But and Cablecast, I think Comcast, I think, cable company out of Philly, they bought the station from General Electric. But we were on all cable systems in Connecticut, Long Island, New York. But we were streaming it. But in those days, when you watched the streaming, which we commonly know now as podcasting, when you watched it in those days, it was fluttered. The picture fluttered. It never locked in. They didn't have it perfected yet, but they were working on it. Now, of course, it's perfect. But back then, it was new. So we did the first streaming, which is now called Peacock. That was at NBC. And I was on every night between 10 and midnight from Times Square in the window of the NASDAQ building. And the trick was to get people from the Broadway shows after they were through performing, which is after 11 usually, and then come in for the last hour or so. And I had you get anybody you want when you're in Times Square in a window and you have a show. I mean, come on, who do you want? So one night the police were complaining because of the crowd and the noise and everything, but my guest was the governor, Patterson at the time. So he walked out and they said, "Oh, Your Honor, oh, Your Honor." Then everybody backed off. All of a sudden it was okay. You know, when you have somebody who has power and money, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. But Americans, we all know that. We all know it. They think Elton John is still rich. I said, if he was that rich, he wouldn't work. You know, you go to work because you're trying to keep your airplanes, your staffs, your 5 houses going. You got to make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of these celebrities are all about image. One last thing on that note, I know I'm talking a lot. You got the wrong guy. If you wanted a silent,
I wasn't expecting an interview. I just thought I'd get a nice one question and a monologue. So keep going.
Okay, well, one last thing about that is that they say that content is king on the internet. It's often said, content is king. And I said, no, it's not. Content is what is. Image is what you think it is. Image is king. And that's the difference, that I operate on content. I don't operate on image. I don't care what you think of me coming out of the box. I care what I think of me because I want to do what I think is correct. You know, suitable for something that's family-like or family-friendly or friendly-friendly. You know, I think we're going the wrong way right now with our money in the country. The country is all about money and then the job. It should be, give me the job and then pay me. Now it's, how much is this? And then I'll do the job. We got it wrong.
Well,
going the wrong way.
That's the way we did it when we were younger, getting out into the business. It was, wow, I want to work there. But the money was just, you know, sort of validation, I guess. I mean, you need money, but it wasn't the important thing. The number one thing was being on that station or in that market. So, and well, you've been in all the markets, so I mean, you have a great track record. I don't even. Is there a book on you yet? Another one? You had one.
It's called "Let It Smile Be Your Umbrella, but Don't Get a Mouthful of Rain."
Yeah, but that was done a long time ago. I mean, is there like a new one that you could do? I mean, it would be that's a good job to have.
No, Judith Reagan, who did Private Parts, Judith and I are friends. She wanted me to do a telltale book, and I didn't want to do that, and I'm glad I didn't, because you know I don't want people to think that I am living off of their mistakes. I have my own. I've never run out. What am I going to start picking on someone else? I know a lot of things about a lot of people, you know, like who was it, Joe Pesci in the movie, or Robert De Niro, which one says, "Hey, I know something," you know, just like,
I know things.
Tell them something, you know, however that went. But it's fun. It's just fun, you know, to watch how we all try to get out of things. That's the funny part. The funny part is not getting into it. It's how you're going to get out of it. That's where you say, "Wow, that guy's got something figured out. Let me." That's the person to follow, not Morgan and Morgan. You know, you got people we never used to be able to advertise lawyers on the air. Now everybody's in the accident business because the money's in the insurance, which we all have to pay. So now you say with Morgan and Morgan, they said, "There's only one Morgan and Morgan." I said, "That's two Morgans."
That's two Morgans.
And then the wife is on there now. She said, "We started this law firm years ago as a family." And I thought, oh my God, so did the mob. You know, I mean, get out of here. Don't tell me about a family. I'm Italian. And today they got another boat in Venezuela. What do we do? What are we going to do? We're going to start attacking people that we think are going to send drugs here. We grow them here.
Yeah.
Oh, I
It's
go
a
to 12-step meetings because I want to stay sober. And when you're staying sober, you're working on yourself. So you're not so busy with everybody else's faults. I got enough of my, as I mentioned earlier, I got enough of my own. I don't need to go, I don't need to send out. I don't need DoorDash to come over and bring me any faults. I got my own. Thank you.
well, listen, I thank you
So
for
have we had enough
for
time here? Am
doing.
I?
Yeah, well, you've certainly covered the gamut. I think we probably should do this again. There's so it's in progress. The Joey Reynolds experience is in progress, and knowing you as a friend has been wonderful, and I'm grateful
Well,
that
well,
you've been in my life.
well, I love you, Jimmy. You're great. You're a great talent. You never really took the bow in the spotlight. You were always behind the scenes making everybody else shine. That's what you've been doing. You did it when you were on the air years ago. You were always really good, and then you decided when you moved to LA, all of a sudden you're making everybody else really good. Now,
Yeah.
I want to say something about what I wanted to do just with the Friars Club because it's closed now.
Okay.
Uh, uh, you know, I love good talent. Well, nobody likes bad talent, but I said what we really need in radio to revive this sucker because we have the reach. The reach is still there. You've got plenty of radios. We have plenty of cars. Well, maybe not so many as we used to, but we have radio. You got television. You got the reach on the media. And I said, but we don't have a farm team. We're not letting people be free and develop their thing. Even like Saturday Night Live, when it began with Lorne Michaels, he came from Toronto, which is under Buffalo, that. He came in there and he let people create and they were free. And a lot of them became big stars. And then some are just great talents anyway, no matter what. And then
Yeah.
the regular ones who are already on the charts, like Simon, Paul Simon. I think we gotta develop a space. And I called Dick Robinson, who owns 16 schools of Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I said, why don't you turn the schools into a free form place where we can learn what we really want to be when we find it. But you have to find it. You have to find your voice, they call it in industry. You have to see what the essence of it. Now I'm getting too elaborate, but you really have to see what brings you pleasure and how you're going to make other people happy. And it's a wonderful journey, but we don't have a place like that I could think of.
Hmm.
Uh, and that was the creative force that we used to have at your place when you had in Hollywood. You developed that. People came in. You had all the crazy people. I was one of them for a while,
Hmm.
and you were open. You were an open field for different talents, and some of the names. I can go through the whole list of the ones I knew from your place, and they're all different. There was no one announcer or one engineer or one. There all these different places. We don't have that anymore. We don't
I
have
used
the
to
variety of talent.
I used to find a group of young kids really
Mhm.
who had not any experience. One would become a writer, one would become a production
Mhm.
editor, one would actually do a voice thing, and pretty soon they're all doing all of that, and it's like a repertory company, which I think is one of the best ways to learn about
Yes,
everything.
exactly.
So,
Well,
and
that's
I
why I mentioned Roy
and
Michaels. You're in the same way. You were that way with all the production and radio
And
and
I
the
talked
comedy.
to I
Comedy.
talked to them recently. I kind of forget what era they're from, but to a person, they all say, "Wow, this was the greatest job that I ever had." It was the
Yeah.
best learning experience that took them to wherever they are now. So I agree with you totally. And of course, you're a pioneer, and like they say, the only thing a pioneer gets is an arrow in the back. So, but it's fun being a pioneer. It's great to be able to do something that no one has done before. And you were certainly in the beginning of so many things. And thank you for this interview. Could talk to you all day, but the time is short. And
I'll tell you something. An artist came in when I was a creative director, 20th Century Fox.
Oh, wow.
Ernie Barnes,
Yeah, amazing.
Detroit. I knew him from Detroit.
That's worth something, isn't it? I think.
Oh, it's worth it. It's
Memories
invaluable. I
for
mean,
sure.
what's worth it? What's worth it? You want me to show you something worth it? Is that worth it? I could show you this all day with all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
not going to do anything. What's going to
Yeah.
do something is take what's inside of you and share it. You give it away to keep it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Joey. It's my pleasure.
I love you.
Love you too.
And you
Best
can't
life to
vote
you.
on it. You cannot vote on that.
Take care.
All right, Jim.